You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You can also click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you'll get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome back to Beyond Wellness Radio. Today we have a great guest, Dr. Bernd Friedlander. Dr. Friedlander is a researcher, he's a clinician, also a physical therapist, a doctor in chiropractic medicine, nutritionist, and has years and years of experience with human performance and biohacking at the professional level, as well as the clinical level that we see all our patients at today. So Dr. Bernd, welcome to the show.
Dr. Justin, how are you? I appreciate having me on your show. I look forward to talking to you.
Well, thank you. And I know you are one of the most foremost experts out there on collagen. And I love collagen for all the great benefits. It helps with hair, skin, nails, joints, and it's just a really excellent amino acid. Would you mind? I know we have a product that you help formulate here for us called True Collagen. That's absolutely great. It's a collagen peptide formula, which we love the peptides because we deal with so much with leaky gut, and people have a hard time taking the collagen and breaking it down, and this makes it a lot easier. Would you mind talking about just kind of collagen and kind of the overall benefits and kind of what your take on it is?
Yes, I got into collagen actually accidentally when I was working with the Los Angeles Raiders. I was working with a number of the athletes there, especially Howie Long. Wow. And I was introduced to an orthopedic doctor back in the 80s, and he was interested in my work with the athletes and how I incorporated nutrition as well as dietary supplements to the athletes in the 80s. They weren't into that. They were still eating carbohydrate and low fats, low proteins. But now I sort of turned them around by increasing the protein levels and reducing the carbohydrates. And at that time, I was working with Knox Gelatin. They developed a formula for me that I was able to use with my athletes. So the orthopedic doctor was telling me that he reversed his own serious disc herniation that he developed as an athlete. He was a premier high school athlete that was highly recruited by 5 different universities, and he ended up going to Michigan. And his first year in Michigan playing football, he ruptured his disc so badly that it really destroyed his possibility to even be a professional athlete. So he ended up going through medical school, training, and becoming an orthopedic doctor. And he told me instead of trying to get surgery done, he looked at every aspect of the spinal cord and to see how he can reverse the degenerative condition that he developed from sports by healing himself. So he started using Knox Gelatin collagen at that time, which was not a true collagen.
Yes.
It was more in the gelatin form.
Yes.
But he started taking 3 to 4 packets a day with vitamin D, vitamin C, and calcium. Within 6 months, the pain was gone. Within 1 year, he never needed surgery. So we discussed this while I was working with the Raiders, how beneficial collagen is, and I started really researching it extensively with Linus Pauling and a few other experts in the field, and discovered that 99% of the spinal cord is made of collagen. It was the primary protein that developed the spinal cord, and then the nerves and myelin sheath, etc., developed from that. And I started realizing that collagen has many properties: anti-inflammatory, repairing, regenerating, cartilage repair. It also repairs tendons and ligaments. It's the only protein that does that.
I love it. And then regarding the collagen types that you like, you're a big, the main collagen that we're doing is getting from grass-fed beef. That's the true collagen, and that's type 1 and type 4, correct?
It's actually type 1 and 3.
1 and 3.
1 and 3 is predominantly what the human body is made out of. Type 2 has a little hyaluronic acid, and that's usually from chicken cartilage.
Yep.
The problem why I never got into chicken cartilage, because most of the producers of chicken cartilage are not naturally fed. They use soy and corn, and that disturbs the hormonal balance of the chicken as well as the thyroid, disrupts thyroid function. So I stayed away from chicken cartilage.
That's amazing. That is very good. So 1 and 3 is going to give us the best bet. Now with the collagen peptides too, we have the digestion benefits, right? Because they're in peptide form. That's why when you put the regular gelatin in, it makes basically Jell-O. That's kind of where Jell-O came from. But this type of collagen that you've created, you put it in a peptide form, so then when you put it in the water, you literally can see it dissolve and breaking down right in front of your eyes. Can you talk about how you guys do that, and then how does that benefit us from an absorption standpoint?
Well, going back to the days that I was working with Knox Gelatin, we were discussing this with the R&D department, and the R&D department for Knox Gelatin is highly advanced in the field of collagen peptide. They're not willing to make this kind of collagen. It was too extensive and too pricey. So they sort of connected me in how I need to achieve that kind of peptide form. So I started reviewing their research and working with chemists. And the ideal thing is you want a hydrolyzed peptide form of collagen. So it is 99% absorbed immediately within 5 to 10 minutes without any digestive enzymes requiring. As you know, every amino acid protein out there, you have to break it down through hydrochloric acid and pepsin through the stomach, and then the pancreas through the pancreatic enzymes, trypsin and chymotrypsin. And then you also need B6 to convert the amino acids to a peptide. Collagen doesn't require any form of enzymes or B6 to be broken down. It's immediately delivered in the blood to the area that it needs to repair, regenerate, or work with.
I love that. So that just really increases the absorption. And with the true collagen, I played around it. I got the NeoCell chicken cartilage, like you mentioned, and you just can pour some of it in there, and you can see it literally become emulsified kind of right before your very eyes.
Right. And the other thing about your collagen that you have is it is the lowest molecular weight collagen on the planet right now. So far, achieved a very low molecular. And the other thing that people don't understand compared to all the other collagen out there, our molecular levels is extremely low. Therefore, it's going to be assimilated, absorbed immediately. Number two, the density, the structure and the density of the collagen is very important. We were able to also bring down the density structures to the levels that it is now truly absorbable, utilized more efficiently, and you are producing more minerals out of these collagens as well.
I love that. And I know we talked in the past about dosing. The typical recommendations that I have for my patients currently are 10 to 20 grams a day maintenance, and then up to 40 to 60 grams if you're trying to get aesthetic benefits, or if you're trying to rehab joint issues or disc issues. Would you say those recommendations are correct?
I would say for maintenance for skin, we did a study with animals back in France and Japan in the early 2000s. And we found that 10 grams of collagen restores elasticity in the skin and also helps with bone density. But when you're working with humans, you want to increase that level because there's so many other factors, density and structure and inflammation. So I find that if you do 30 grams in the morning and 30 grams in the afternoon, early evenings, I have seen people where their joints, shoulders, rotator injuries, torn rotators, bone-to-bone cartilage in the knee or the hip. I've seen people and had people testimonials come to me saying that they're able to walk for the first time or use weights for the first time using that program about 60 grams. We found about 40 to 60 grams restores and repairs and regenerates injuries.
Now, what did you notice with your chiropractic patients clinically in practice? What were you seeing with their disc issues, let's say before you're using collagen to after? What were you noticing in their recovery times? How much was it improved?
Well, very important, stated. Going towards my latter part of my years with the athletes, I noticed the athletes dramatically improve and recover much faster when I started them on collagen, especially with the Raiders and the Rams and some of the other athletes. And then when I started introducing it to my patients, I've noticed that I was able to facilitate their healing dramatically. So I didn't need to treat them as much as I used to, and they're able to function much faster. And the pain, the first thing I hear from the patient is dramatically that the pain goes down dramatically. And that's so important, as you know, is reducing pain and inflammation. So that's the first thing. Inflammation and pain went down dramatically fast, and then within weeks, they're able to function and move their joints and able to sit or drive without having that discomfort in their lower back.
Now, were there any other herbs that you find would really synergistically help reduce the inflammation, maybe boswellia or curcumin? Anything you've done clinically?
So we've done a lot of research. I'm on the board of Florida A&M University College of Pharmacy and at the Ohio State University College of Medicine, and then working with UC Davis and UCLA. We found that there's many plants out there that are very highly anti-inflammatory. And you mentioned boswellia being number one. We found boswellia by far number one. Ginger, rosemary, actually turmeric and curcumin was not in the high rank. It wasn't extremely as powerful as some of these other herbs. But boswellia, definitely number one on every situation we did research. And then we found ginger, rosemary, cloves, all the other, spices you see out there. Cardamom is very powerful as an anti-inflammatory. But then if you add turmeric with ginger and rosemary and boswellia, it does enhance, but by itself it didn't do as much. My number one thing, I'll tell you by far, is aspirin. I find aspirin works all the time for me because aspirin is a natural anti-inflammatory. It works on COX-1 and COX-2 inflammatory prostaglandins. The only one that deals with 1 and 2. And number 3, it has tremendous antioxidant ability as well as helps trabecular, meaning it restores bone back with collagen. When taking aspirin with collagen, it helps to bind the collagen to the bone and glues it together.
So regarding the aspirin, would it be just as good or better to do the white willow bark instead just to avoid some of the gut or liver side effects?
No, there's really not that much. The problem with people with aspirin is that they already, and vitamin E reduces ulcers dramatically. If they take baking soda with aspirin, they can actually buffer the aspirin. So they can take I have people take 6 to 10 aspirins a day with baking soda, and they have no problems. As a matter of fact, one of the side effects was that one person who was dealing with a structural problem was on my collagen. He started taking 6 to 10. His stomach cancer actually went down dramatically. And his father, who's an MD, was amazed by the results. And so he incorporated aspirin with his patients for other conditions such as, colon and stomach cancer.
And aspirin doesn't have the
So
same side effects of like ibuprofen or the NSAID
no,
family, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, correct?
it doesn't cause any liver discomfort or throws off the detoxification system,
Right.
and it has so many. It also reduces fatty acid synthesis, which is a byproduct of mitochondrial deficiency. When you take if you take aspirin and collagen and coffee in the morning, it doubles the uncoupling mechanism of the mitochondrial protein. So it enhances the mitochondria to achieve ATP more efficiently.
Interesting. And I think aspirin was created from the white willow bark too, correct? So that did come from an herb originally.
Yeah, and you can use, like you said, white willow bark is exceptional. It works. And usually it takes a little longer time, but once you have enough in the body, it does work as well or even better than aspirin.
Very interesting. What's your take on systemic enzymes for inflammation?
For inflammation, I find I've always used bromelain, number one, for that purpose, and quercetin. Bromelain and quercetin works for me the most effectively. And the research that I looked at, it's always well known in athletic performance that bromelain was always number one. Chymotrypsin, trypsin, all these things, they have some anti-inflammatory mechanisms, but they work more on breaking down protein more efficiently, and that's their function. Bromelain has more of an anti-inflammatory mechanisms of, dealing with prostaglandins, et cetera.
Prostaglandins, right. Interesting. And what about topical effects of collagen? Maybe putting it on topically or taking it topically maybe to heal cuts or wounds or scars. What's your take on the best protocol for healing cuts, wounds, and scars?
Well, the one you have, the True Collagen, that you provide to your patients, because of the molecular weight is extremely the lowest on the market today, it will penetrate through the skin a little bit more efficiently. Most collagen, the molecular weights are too large. It's like hyaluronic acid. There are different molecular weights of hyaluronic acid. And for the joints, you need the lowest molecular weight to get in there. For the skin, you don't need that much. But in collagen, you will get some effect from the lower molecular, low density weight of collagen. And people have made like a topical paste,
Yes.
on their skin. And I've heard incredible stories. I myself take it orally.
Yep.
And I've noticed just orally, everybody says I'm 68 and I'm out in the sun every day. They all say, you got incredible skin. How do you keep it that way? It's got to be collagen, because I don't do much other than that.
Absolutely. I saw Dave Asprey maybe a year or two ago at the Paleo FX conference, and he was getting all these compliments on his hair growing out and his skin and his vibrance, and he just said he's really upped the collagen to 60 grams a day. I think that mirrors your protocol, the 30 and 30, and he was crediting a lot of his hair and skin benefits from the higher dose collagen as well.
Interesting. 3 years ago, I had dinner with one of the doctors, and he had a client in Chicago, who was working out, who was an osteopath there, and she was working out in the gym, and right across the street is Oprah Winfrey.
Wow.
And Oprah Winfrey is very close to this guy named Alexis. Alexis is a Bulgarian powerlifter. He had a gym called in Chicago, and he was telling me that he was taking my collagen, that collagen peptides that you have, and he had severe bone-to-bone loss of cartilage in his knee from lifting over 3,000 pounds over his head. And he's a record holder in his country, and he was a former Olympic lifter, and he was complaining every day about pain. So the doctor says, well, let me give you some of this collagen I've been taking. So he gave him a couple pounds of it, and in a couple days he went back to her and said, this is the most incredible thing. I started taking 60 grams of this stuff, and I noticed my pain went down. So he went on a 100-gram a day level for 6 weeks, went to his orthopedic doctor. He took an x-ray of his knee. He says, my God, what's going on? You got cartilage growing back in your knee. And he says, I notice I have no So it was, he was on 100 because he's a massive individual. He's huge. He's like a football player, but very short and stocky. So when you're in that kind of dense person and athletic like he is, you need to go even higher.
Love
and
it.
You
that
don't
makes so
have
much
to
sense.
be on it all the time. Yeah, you don't have to be on it. I remember reading an article way back in the 50s, 60s from a MD, and he was giving everybody bone broth, chicken stock, and collagen from different sources. And he was adding it every single day to their diet, and that's how he restored their health completely.
Love it. That makes so much sense. And are there any topical products out there on the market that you're aware of that you can take in conjunction with the collagen, but topical to put on any cuts or wounds or things like that to help improve healing and recovery there? Reduce scarring?
Yeah, I mean, if you ever have a problem with any situation, hydrogen peroxide works so easily and so fast in wound healing, and also somehow basal cell carcinoma, you may see it disappear. Vitamin E and vitamin C are my two favorites. You put vitamin C and vitamin E and hyaluronic acid together, and it is one of the best because, vitamin C and collagen are so complementary
Yes, they are.
to each other. They work synergistically together. And when you have enough vitamin C, it enhances collagen function. And also collagen does the same thing to vitamin C. So adding vitamin C just itself has profound effects. And
That's
if
great.
you get, if you use above 10% of the solution, then you're going to see results.
Is that a 3% hydrogen peroxide, or is that a food grade?
Yes, I've used even food grade where I mix it a little bit, so I get it down to about 10, 15%. And I've myself had a couple, things on my nose from being outdoors. I played professional soccer all my life, so I've been outdoors all my life and ran track. So you develop these little sunspots, and
right.
I put it on there, and it goes away. It's gone. If I tap with a Q-tip, I use it topically, and it stings. You want it to get it to the level where you have a sting out of it. For about 3 minutes, it stings, and then you just let it go, and the next day, add another one, and then in a few days, it's gone.
Love it. That's great. Excellent tips. And then let's talk about some of the gut healing, because I know you mentioned just bone broth a few minutes ago, and I know Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, the person who created the GAPS diet to help people with gut issues, the gut and psychology syndrome diet, she talks about bone broth, and bone broth is really high in glycine. That's one of the major benefits of glycine, and we know glycine is also really, really, really high in collagen, along with hydroxyproline and proline. Can you talk about how glycine really helps to work to heal the gut?
Well, collagen and glycine, the wall, the lining of the wall is, even in the arteries, people don't understand that. Linus Pauling told me this many years ago, that the lining of the walls of the arteries of the gut is predominantly the Teflon, the smoothness is made from collagen. That's why he was a big promoter of lysine and proline and vitamin C in his program, is because he wanted to increase the Teflon, the smoothness, the elasticity of the lining of the wall. The cell membrane, where nutrients go in and out, water retention and sodium, potassium, it's all controlled by collagen proteins such as glycine. And it helps to heal the gut by sealing the leaky gut syndrome, the gut junctions, which get inflamed, and they start, proliferating with holes because of the inflammatory mechanisms. And collagen seems to seal that. So if people start taking collagen with their meals, they don't have the symptoms of leaky gut or Crohn's or IBS or colitis. They don't get that kind of symptom because collagen helps to reduce the inflammatory mechanisms by suppressing MMP9, which is a major inflammatory component. And collagen is one of the few that reduces the MMP9 mechanisms that causes most of your inflammation in the gut. And it does that, and glycine does that, and so does lysine, proline, and alanine, and even a little glutamine in there. So you're going to get that healing effect that happens. And you're right. The endotoxins that we consume and produce in the gut, when it leaks out, it causes all your major inflammatory conditions, neurological conditions, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. All these things are caused by that. Arthritis is another component of leaky gut syndrome. So the more collagen you take, the more you're having more protection in supporting the lining of the wall and reducing the inflammation.
Interesting. Yeah, I see that. That's the matrix metalloproteinase 9. And there's a couple of studies I'm looking at, one here right now on PubMed in the Journal of Development, and they're talking about that being modulated by collagen matrix formulas. So that makes sense. So it's really helping to modulate that MMP9, thus helping to reduce inflammation and improve joint and inflammation recovery.
Yes. So you got many benefits from collagen. It's not only just repair and regenerate, but protection. And also another big thing, one of the biggest areas I worked on was a caloric restriction diet. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until about 20 years later, after working with Roy Walford, and I started realizing what are the benefits of caloric restriction diet. Well, the major benefits, I started reviewing every single paper from Richard Miller to Lopez to Ostrander and others, is that by increasing autophagy, and by reducing inflammation and iron and reducing polyunsaturated oils, which are the major contributors of aging. But here's what I've started. If you reduce certain inflammatory proteins like methionine, cysteine, and tryptophan, which are devoid in collagen, now I understood why collagen is such an important protein, because it's devoid of three major amino acids that contribute to basically oxidative stress, glycation, thyroid dysfunction, all proven by these low caloric restriction diets that they saw the markers of what they're looking for, the stresses on the body, the epigenetic genes that are expressed by reducing caloric restriction. It all comes back to these amino acids that were linked to all these three researchers, Richard Miller, work on this, who's a PhD MD, and some other people like Lopez and Ostrander and others like that, and Ray Peat. It showed that collagen, devoid of this, is the only protein out there that is safe to consume on a daily basis that have the caloric restriction benefits.
But you don't see any problems with, I get that, so maybe we can apply some intermittent fasting and such into our weekly regimen. That makes sense. I get that. But eating like grass-fed meat or like fresh salmon or foods that have serotonin or 5-HTP or tyrosine in it, is that going to be okay? Is that going to cause a problem?
Eventually, the serotonin issue raises estrogen. And with my cancer patients, I've treated over 14,000 cancer patients, and estrogen and serotonin is very high in almost all of them. And they're contributing to reducing thyroid function, number one. They also increase nitric oxide and histamine, which is a contributing factor to endotoxins, leaky gut syndrome, and brain function. So what I've also discovered, if you complement collagen with these type of foods that are high in tryptophan, it sort of reduces the damaging effect of tryptophan, methionine, and cysteine. So collagen balances whatever foods you're going to eat. So I remember a very famous MMA cage fighter and working with Chris Cyborg, who's #1 in the world, undefeated. When she was on whey protein, she had a lot of distension and bloating and gut issues. But when we added collagen in a higher level, all those symptoms went away completely. But when she stopped with collagen, they came back.
Interesting.
So that's why she realized that how important was collagen to her supplement, because it reduced the inflammation, the gut, the bloating, the distension, and the fatigue that she developed from having that. And the weight gain.
Yeah. So you think maybe there was a good parity with the collagen adding the extra glycine, hydroxyproline, proline with some of the higher amount of sulfur, amino / glutathione precursors in the way. You think that kind of added a good balance to it, essentially?
Yeah. And one of the things you got to be careful with the glutathione and sulfur groups, in all the research that we've done and I've looked at, maintaining an oxidative metabolism, that means, looking at the redox signaling. You got glycation of glucose. Oxidation of glucose is how everything works. And then you have the reduction state as the byproduct of energy. Okay, you get the reduced state. You want to convert the reduced state, the NADH, back to NAD+. That's where all the science is going. So maintaining a highly NAD+ state maintains longevity and reduces the chances for heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. And by reducing these amino acids that I mentioned, these amino acids, even the glutathione amino acids, maintain the body in an NADH state, in a reduced state. And you want to convert that back to NAD+. And the amino acids that do that are your proline, lysine, and glycine. Lysine, proline, and glycine are the major ones that contribute to an oxidative state. And
very interesting.
Yeah.
So
and
just
that's
to kind
why
of
a lot of,
go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. That's why a lot of the stem cell clinics, Avi Herskowitz in San Francisco uses my collagen to prep the body to make more stem cells. So when he does stem cells from either the fatty tissue or from the embryo, from the bone using bone marrow, he'll prep the patient up with collagen because it doubles the stem cell function and improves the stem cells.
Love that. And you were just referring to a lot of the various pathways that are involved in the Krebs cycle, which has to do with the mitochondrial function. I want to talk about that in just a bit. And you were talking about a lot of these reducing agents. And just for the listeners at home, all a reduction agent is, it takes on an electron. Oxidation is a loss of electrons. Reduction is a gain of electrons. So you have the NAD plus the H, that's the electron. You have the FADH2, which adds the extra electron. And these electrons, these hydrogen compounds, are then brought into the electron transport chain to generate more ATP. So, Bernd, can you switch gears and talk about the mitochondria? Just kind of give your Reader's Digest version of what it is and what people can do to help improve their mitochondrial function.
Yes. Going back to billions of years ago, the molecule that gave life to every living system was a bacteria called an organelle called the mitochondria. And when the mitochondria established an envelope around itself, it created these organelles for energy. Every plant, every animal, every living system has, and this is what the oxidation reduction cycling is all about. And every disease state, like Edison Pharmaceuticals working on a mitochondrial molecule that increases mitochondria in the brain, because all degenerative diseases they're finding are caused by lack of NAD plus and increased NADH, which is the reduction state of the cell. And if you can increase the NAD plus, when we're born with a 500 to 1 ratio of NAD plus to NADH. As we get older, this level starts declining to 200 to 1 to 100 to 1, and then it shifts. That's how disease starts. And that's how the cell, everything that the body regenerates with, it requires mitochondrial function. The immune system functions by the mitochondria, by producing energy. And the byproduct is CO2, carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is a chemical necessary. It's very valuable in producing energy as well, but it's an antioxidant. It reduces free radical damage in the mitochondria by producing CO2. And people don't realize that's why high altitude athletes train in high altitude to enhance performance and recovery. We did a study with cancer patients. By putting them in high altitude, they were able to recover from their cancer, because the more CO2 you have, the great ability to recover and to increase NAD+. And Speckman did the largest study in the world on animals than humans, that by maintaining a highly oxidative state, all the animals that live the longest, all the human cultures that have the highest longevity, he discovered they all had a very high metabolic function due to the NAD+, to the mitochondria being at optimal levels. Sinclair and Quarante out of Harvard, they are all working on molecules that produce mitochondria energy by increasing NAD+. Because once you have NAD levels higher, you can't get hypoxia, which is one of the components to aging and disease and cardiovascular diseases and cancer. And then another thing that occurs is fatty acid synthesis, which is another molecule that cancer cells switch from oxidative of glucose. They go into breaking down fats and proteins in our body to make energy for the cancer cells to, continue their reproduction and growth. And
Interesting.
if you switch that and reduce fatty acid synthesis, reduce hypoxia inducible factor 1, you do that by increasing NAD+. That's how you change the whole element. So niacinamide and collagen together works the best for increasing
B vitamins, B2.
NAD.
Mm-hmm.
B1, B2, you're absolutely right. And quercetin, anything that has that helps with NAD molecules. And then also reducing the inflammatory conditions of the body, the amino acids that produce inflammation, the foods that produce inflammation. Iron and polyunsaturated oils are one of the worst things that reduces NAD levels in the mitochondria. So you want to reduce polyunsaturated oils and only go to cream, butter, olive oil, coconut oil, MCT oils. These are promoters of NAD. They're promoters of mitochondrial function, and they also promote thyroid. And thyroid is the major organ that regulates the mitochondria and maintains the function of the mitochondria at the optimum levels.
So I want to just make sure I'm hearing you correctly. You talked about oxidative stress being a good thing, right? But at the same standpoint, though, iron can create more oxidative stress as well. Like that's like the rusting on the nail, right? That's oxidative stress. So how do we have both of those things that kind of seem like they're almost in conflict?
Well, again, at a certain age, we can reduce the levels of iron. We don't need it after the age of 40 as much. So by reducing, never take iron with vitamin C. That's the problem.
Yep.
And iron and polyunsaturated oils are another problem. They contribute to glycation and misfolding protein. So in that sense, that's okay. That's what we have to do. But by making sure that we shift our body to a high NAD plus state with CO2, as from drinking, that's where you get from baking soda. You increase CO2 levels. You get it from drinking mineral water like Pellegrino or the German one called Gerolsteiner.
Yep.
These are good sources of natural CO2, and that keeps your body at that level.
Interesting.
So the thing is, you always want to keep an oxidation of glucose is the major function of the mitochondria. Once it's efficiently high in that oxidative state of glucose, by breaking down glucose more efficiently, that's how we get energy. And that's just basically regulated by our thyroid and reducing estrogen in our body. Estrogen and nitric oxide and histamine are the major contributor factors to deficient mitochondrial function and lowering thyroid function.
I totally understand. And regarding the iron too, that recommendation may be different with females to males, as women do menstruate every month, up until they go menopausal, late 40s, early 50s. So they're shedding some of that iron every month in their menstruation. Would you recommend a therapeutic phlebotomy or just giving blood maybe once a quarter or a couple times a year to help reduce some of that iron load as well?
Yeah, and it also helps to produce more red blood cells. And it's like stem cells. You're stimulating the body to make more red blood cells, and you want to do that. One of the best things to do that is every 3 to 6 months. I have friends that do that religiously and keeps their health up and immune system up, and they seem to do really well.
Very good. Now, regarding some of the oxidation/reduction, so you mentioned the oxidation agents are like NAD or FADH minus the H2. So we're missing that extra hydrogen. So basically what I'm trying to understand and kind of boil down for the patients is that we're trying to take those hydrogen, those electrons from the Krebs cycle, and we're trying to move them over to the electron transport chain so we can generate more energy and have better mitochondrial function. Is that the goal?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I had a wonderful discussion way back in listening to the fellow that invented the RNA, DNA with Cricket and Watts.
Yep.
He was on Charlie Rose, and about 5 years ago, he said on national television, we're losing the war on cancer. And Charlie says, why? He says, we're not looking at the Krebs cycle. We're not looking at the oxidative effects of glucose, oxidation of glucose in the mitochondria. He says, if we start looking at that and shift back to understanding how the Krebs cycle went, we can win the war on cancer. He said it on national television. And he's absolutely right. He says if we can increase the NAD plus levels in our body, we should be able to repair anything that's damaged and reverse conditions that are, created by these deficiencies. And so he said the right words, and it's all based on Otto Warburg. He said that and got 2 Nobel Prizes. Gumberg said the same thing in his work. Saleh did the same thing. So did Georgi. So did William Koch. And they're all 5 people, and Linus Pauling agreed with all 5 of them that this is such an important thing about the oxidation of glucose that goes totally in a deficient or breaks down in the mitochondria due to these elements of free radical damage. And that's why autophagy, recycling the damage and using it for energy, is why you have intermittent fasting or exercise, or, and that's what caloric restriction diets have done. They help in autophagy phases increase the mechanisms.
Okay, so this is interesting. So we have a phenomenon known as advanced glycation end products that if we consume too much sugar and we coat our proteins with too much sugar and we get our hemoglobin A1C levels too high, we can increase free radical stress. So where's the balance? Where's the tipping point where glucose goes too high and we create this extra oxidative stress? Is it have to do with insulin resistance? How do you measure that? How do you make specific recommendations for your patients regarding carbohydrate and glucose consumption?
Okay. Very interesting. You and I started working with the inventor of the MRI, okay? And we're looking at brain chemistry. Raymond Domanian is a genius, and we're looking at cerebral spinal fluids. And Raymond actually is the founder of the MRI, and he founded the Phonar. And he says that chiropractors are the greatest people to work with because they know how to treat the cerebral spinal fluid, which contributes to every neurological disease known to man. Okay? Concussion syndromes found, like the worst one was Jim McMahon, and I'll share this really important one. Jim McMahon had the worst concussion syndrome of any athlete in
And just
pro
for the
football.
listeners, he was the quarterback for the Chicago Bears, 86. He won the Super Bowl with them as well.
Yep. And the whole story is on his website. And finally, the family sent Jim McMahon to Raymond Domanian in New York for his Phonar. The Phonar is the only true MRI that you can stand up, not recline. You get the correct posture, the correct flow of the brain cerebral spinal fluid, so you can see what is actually wrong with the body. And it takes 30 seconds, and it's not a claustrophobia effect, and it costs almost nothing to do. And he did a whole evaluation of his brain, and with the camera that he developed in the early 2000s with the Phonar, he was able to see the cerebral spinal fluid and the ventricles and how it was damaged. In concussion syndrome, it is the ventricles the cerebrospinal fluid is supposed to flow from the brain to the spinal cord,
Got
32 quarts a day. 32 quarts a day, and a half a quart is produced by the ventricles every day. In the concussion syndromes like Jim McMahon and many others and MS patients, they're only producing 12 quarts or less. And when he had a chiropractor by the name of Scott Rosa do an active hole-in-one adjustment, Atlas only.
Yep.
They corrected Jim McMahon in 2 treatments where his function is back to normal. His dementia is completely gone. He's functioning at full state of mind. And that's rare. You never see that. We've done that with other athletes from the NFL. Same thing. They restore themselves back to normal. And we've had autism patients, adult autism, completely recovered back just by correcting their cerebrospinal fluid.
So what are the best chiropractic techniques to help with that? I know sacral occipital technique is great. There's up ledger as well. You mentioned some of the upper cervical, whether it's Atlas orthogonal or upper cervical knee chest or NUCA. Are there any other specific chiropractic techniques you like for that?
Well, I asked that with Raymond. He believes that chiropractic in general has the best benefit. Yes, if you can isolate the Atlas and adjust that correctly, he says that has been the best value for treating these conditions, and the results are very quick and fast. And another thing, I was talking to a cell physiologist who works with Raymond, who developed a lot of the insight for Raymond to develop the Phonar. He says if you correct the thyroid does the same thing. It helps with cerebrospinal fluid function.
Wow.
So going back to this glycation, misfolding protein, one of the things we found with Raymond and others, it's not sugar that causes misfolding. It's absolutely the wrong thing. It is the polyunsaturated oils in our diet that are the major contributors to misfolding, aggregation, glycation of the proteins. And sugar is so vital for chemistry to work. Actually, my cancer patients, I have to double their sugar intake by giving them more honey, more pure cane sugar, because that retains the oxidative state of the NAD. That's how I get them to switch from the reduction state of NADH back to the oxidative state of the cell.
Interesting.
And we found, and it's sugar, going back to 1867, there was 2 brilliant MDs, a fellow by the name of Budd, B-U-D-D, from England, and another Priori, P-R-I-O-R-I, from France. Both of them, at the same period, were treating diabetes. And you know how they reversed diabetes? They added extra sugar from glucose, fructose, such as honey, and bone broth or chicken broth, and they were able to reverse diabetes. There was recently there was another animal study on diabetes. They gave animals a chow of high sugar and another animal, mice, low sugar content. And the ones with the higher sugar, they were able to measure and show that the island of Langerhans in the pancreas was totally repaired and regenerated. They repaired and regenerated a new function in that island of Langerhans to produce insulin again. So it was. So the science is now showing that, we need fats, we need cholesterol, because cataracts are produced by low cholesterol diets and fat and drugs. And glycation is now contribute to. Glycation is also due to low cholesterol and low sugar diets.
Interesting.
And
now on a paleo. Go ahead. Yep.
No, go.
On a paleo template diet, one of the things that we're doing is we're really focusing on, again, the more high-quality saturated fats, whether it's coconut oil, grass-fed meat, omega-3s from salmon, the good, healthy fats that are going to be more stable and have less lipid peroxidation via the polyunsaturated. So we're doing that, and then with some of these patients that I'm seeing, I see a lot of diabetics. I do see diabetes reverse quite frequently with lower carbohydrate diets. I mean, we see their fasting insulin above 10, and we get it back below 4, and we see that reestablished. So is it because we're changing the polyunsaturated fats, and that's why we're getting these results? Because how can we get both results doing two different things. What's the difference? What's the common variable?
Number one, I will tell you this, talking to these numerous cell physiologists at various universities, such as Oregon, working with Linus Pauling Institute over at Oregon State with Tori Hagen and Joseph Beckman and all that. There's no doubt, and Bruce German out of UC Davis, and Richard Veach out of NIH.
Yep, Harvard.
And Robert Ward of Utah. They all agree that we need to go back and increase our creams and butters and saturated fats.
Okay.
That is the most protective mechanism we have today against aging and diseases. And think about libido and hormones. It's all produced by cholesterol. Cholesterol produces pregnenolone, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA, the major hormones that we need on a daily basis to have the greatest brain protection and protection against cardiovascular disease and cancer is all produced by cholesterol. By reducing the polyunsaturated levels, we're noticing that there's less glycation in misfolding protein. So that is the contributing factor, because the unsaturated oils, even the omega-3s, the fish oils, are contributing to these problems, because fish oils are, fish are cold-blooded animals.
Correct.
And when you extract oil out of the fish, you give it to a human that has a 98.6 temperature, you're actually creating oxidative damage, free radical damage. And that's what happens. And so by increasing the saturated fats, the monosaturated fats like olive oil,
avocado,
you're protecting the body. You're protecting the body against oxidative damage. And that's the major contributing factor. Then second, yes, your carbohydrates, pastas and breads, by reducing those, will help too.
Makes sense. There's probably also an inflammatory component there too, because a lot of the refined sugar is, again, the refined sugar is a little bit different, and also a lot of the refined grains too are going to have an inflammatory component as well, correct?
Yeah. There was a wonderful article done at the Stanford Lipid Chemistry Department, and talking to Buck Institute, their lipid chemistry department there. They found by reducing these polyunsaturated oils, you actually reduce inflammation. They're one of the biggest contributors of inflammation is polyunsaturated oil.
So do you suggest having any nuts at all, or do you say no nuts?
No nuts at all, because the other problem we have in foods is there's a gene called glutathione. And glutathione is a major anti-aging gene, and it's part of the kidney. It regulates vitamin D in the kidney, and also helps with calcium absorption in the bone. So the glutathione is damaged by high phosphorus foods. If you look at all the nuts, predominantly most nuts, except for maybe macadamia and cashews, which have the lowest phosphorus levels.
Okay.
The higher the phosphorus versus calcium, that is what you want to, look at any foods that have a high phosphorus, because phosphorus pulls out calcium out of the bone and also causes kidney problems. Some of your kidney stones and gallbladder stones are caused by high phosphorus diets.
So we want to have nuts that have lower phosphorus, higher calcium. That's going to be your cashews and your macadamia nuts. Is that correct?
Those are the two. I remember working with Robert Atkins.
Yeah.
And Robert, started the Atkins diets and the fat. And his only nut that he would ever use was the macadamia. He would travel to L.A. and I meet with him at the Natural Product Show, and that's what he would be consuming a little bit. But I do very little of any nuts at all. I did look up, the ratio of cashew. They seem to have the lowest amount of phosphorus to the calcium level, and that seems to be okay then.
Okay, interesting. Well, while we're on that topic, what's your typical diet like in a day? Just give me a quick little day in the life. What's breakfast, lunch, and dinner look like for you?
Okay, you're talking to the wrong person. Since I was part of the caloric restriction diet group, I had to do that. But what I
in general,
do this now. In general, I recently started taking a natural prescription thyroid, because I started realizing how important the thyroid really is. As you get older, you need to optimize your thyroid. For 30 minutes, I don't eat anything. Then I have an over easy soft boil or poached egg.
Nice.
That's my breakfast. Then I have 30 grams of collagen with magnesium, calcium, vitamin D, and I put some anti-inflammatory compounds like boswellia and zinc. I always have calcium, magnesium, and zinc twice a day, and with collagen and vitamin C. So then I go and I work out. I work out 7 days a week. I do core exercise, flexibility exercise. You know, I took gymnastics in college, so I do a lot of the headstand push-up kind of things because that's what I had to do when I was in college, to learn how to do balancing with my body. So that's basically my program. I eat very little throughout the day. Once I take collagen in the morning, my appetite diminishes quite a bit. I try to get a little protein and fruit in the afternoon, and then in the evening, I like soups the best with vegetables. I love chicken wings. I like oxtail and lamb shanks. All the foods that are very high in collagen are chicken wings are number one, oxtail, lamb shanks, anything with bone is actually good for you. And, you know, I cook all my vegetables because when you cook vegetables, you actually break down cellulose and you increase the nutrients in absorption.
Yep. People forget that.
Yeah, and salads are not a good thing because we did a study and found that salads contribute to fermentation and gut inflammatory mechanisms and growth of bacteria. Because if anything that is like a green and it's not cooked, like kale and chard, you have to boil them 30 to 40 minutes in order to reduce the oxalic acid, the phosphorus levels, and increase the nutrients of vitamin K.
Totally makes sense. Now, I don't see a lot of excessive carbohydrate in your diet, number one.
No.
Number two, are you also adding in MCT oil too?
I usually take a little MCT with coffee, but not always. I'm more of a butter guy. I like to increase my butter consumption in the morning. That's how I trained I trained the 84 Olympic team by giving them butter in the morning for a workout, before a workout.
That's amazing. How bad are these athletes' diets before you get in there? I mean, you work with Howie Long, LA Raiders guys. What was their diet like typically, and how did you change it?
Howie Long was actually an exceptional guy. He's one of the smartest athletes I ever came across. So his diet was not so bad. He was a big Italian guy, so he ate a lot of Italian. But the sprinters like the Ron Brown, the Evelyn Ashford, all those 100, 200 meter sprinters, their diet was so bad that one of my sprinters who ended up playing professional football was Ron Brown, and he came to me because he's always injured. He would have ice cream and those peanut Reese cups. That was his main diet.
Oh, man.
And he was wondering why he was always injured. A guy named Robert Bivens, a 400 hurler, who went against Edward Moses. We changed their diet into more of a fat and protein and less carbohydrate diet. And once we did that, and we started using collagen from Knox Gelatin at that time, it really helped. And we got more gold medal winners in 84 and 88 than any other country because of the change of the diet. Yeah. And the key was start the morning with protein because that's where you increase your metabolism and your thyroid. And if you don't start the morning with protein, your body's metabolism doesn't work. It slows down, and therefore you increase your fat, you reduce the fat burning mechanism, so your body starts storing more fat in the belly.
Totally. Yeah, my recommendation is always 30 grams of protein in the first 30 minutes of waking up. That makes a lot of sense. And it's amazing how there's a big disconnect with sports and athletes that they just kind of think of food as calories to run the engine. They don't think of it as building blocks to also help repair their body. So you get guys that are making tendons and ligaments out of basic crap in their diet.
Yeah. And you got to understand, athletes today are, extremely high intense performers, and they're working out with heavy weights. The muscles grow, but the tendons and ligaments do not grow. So when you start increasing the massive amounts of training, you are increasing muscle, but you're pulling on the ligaments and tendons, and you're damaging the cartilage. That's why collagen is the only protein that helps with tendons and ligaments repair. It's the only food that we know that has that ability to repair tendons and ligaments.
And when those tissues get damaged, they're severely avascular, meaning they don't have a lot of blood flow. So as soon as you get injured, it takes forever to repair. And then these guys lose a step or two, and then they're out of the league.
Yeah, as a chiropractor, you're well aware. We started using infrared lights, far infrared mats, and anything to restore the circulation to that area. LED diodes, any kind of ultrasound, whatever we can do to increase the circulation. That's the problem.
Oh, awesome. That's great. Today has been an awesome show. Lots of brain candy here today. Is there any other information that you wanted to address for the listeners today?
Well, again, like what you said is, if maintaining a good diet, especially proteins, and increasing your collagen consumption, and don't overeat. We tend to eat too much in one sitting. We can actually eat smaller meals throughout the day and maintain our metabolism to increase throughout the day. And the quality of foods is important. Reduce the polyunsaturates. Number one problem of aging. Do not be afraid of sugar and honey and put it in your coffee or tea. Actually, that keeps the brain requires the most amount of sugar of any part of the body, and then the heart, because they're utilized 24 hours a day. And oxidation of glucose is the main contributing factor for these organs to work.
Interesting.
And then, and look at epigenetic, how genes get turned on and off. And we now know that the amino acids found in collagen, the zinc, the magnesium, the vitamin D, the vitamin K, the green teas, they have the greatest components to helping prevent epigenetic damage.
Love that. That makes so much sense. Now, Dr. Bernd, I asked this question for everyone. If you're stuck on a desert island and you only can bring one supplement, herb, or compound with you, what would it be?
Oh, God. I definitely, after being on collagen, I would have to say collagen number one because, and then I would have to say niacinamide would be my second most important one.
Got it. And that's B3. Excellent. Well, very good, Doc. Is there any other ways people can get in touch with you if they want to get a hold of you? I know your website, drbernfriedlander.com, is another great way to get a hold of you. Any other information for the listeners?
You can email me at drb.friedlander, FRIEDLANDER 10 @gmail.com. So it's David Robert Boy Friedlander, FRIEDLANDER 10 @gmail.com. Now understand, I'm not really in practice anymore. I'm more in consultation, research and working with doctors like yourself.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, you've been doing this for 40 plus years, so good for you. You got a massive encyclopedia of knowledge there.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, and you too.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Bernd. Great having you on the show. Look forward to having you back soon. You have a great day.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.